Welcome back to the Woodshed. We've got a new room. More defined than the last. We've got a light in here that shows us the boundaries of the space that we're in. And two cubes of different colors. And we're invited to come touch. We'll start with the red cube. A familiar sight if you spent time in the world of computers. Binary code. Familiar in the sense that it's still a representation used in popular media to represent a sense of the essential nature of the computer. Even though few of us actually encounter binary in our day-to-day interactions with the machines. Just seeing a stream of characters that we're not able to read immediately starts to signify the digital. Especially with a monospaced font like this, where each character occupies the same amount of space as the others. That action from a distance that was satisfying in the last iteration of the shed, now put to effect. Or being put to work as a kind of instrument. If we tap the cube lightly, we get a small amount of code. If we strike it harder, we get more code. Our second cube allows us to reconfigure the screens of this room. So where we were seeing binary before, now we're seeing hexadecimal. It's the same content, the same words being translated into a different form, a different machine-readable form. Whereas it took 8 digits in the binary to represent a byte of information, it takes 2 digits in this form. Still representing the same words. Now we're seeing both at the same time. We can get close to them in a way that we're not usually able to in our day-to-day interactions with computers. They obviously have this dimensional quality. I can stick my virtual hand through them, and even my face. I can peer behind them. I can actually move my whole body behind them and look back at the room through a screen of hex or binary digits. A layering is satisfying. The font that these digits are appearing in is one that carries no small amount of nostalgia. It's the font, it's a recreation of a font that was used on the Apple II, which was the first computer that our family had in the home. And so just seeing these arrangements of blown up pixels carries with it quite a sense of nostalgia and even comfort. The words that we're seeing here are being rendered in these two different formats are words I wrote 20 some years ago. The font is coming up on 50 years old, if it's not 50 already. And so we're here, in a way, in 3 time periods at once. Time when the font was originally created and was in common use in microcomputers. A set of words written in the 90s at a different utopian age of the digital. And whatever you want to call this moment that we're in now. Let's change up the screens again. Now we're seeing just the ASCII characters, English words. And this again is text written 20 some odd years ago for a web series called Chroma that was all about the newness of the digital and exploring the digital. It's the monologue of a character who has fetishized everything about the digital, who wants to disappear into the digital. And he's going on and on about how digital works and what it needs, how he wants to relate to it. Let's change our screens up again. So now the room's in full effect. We've got our English texts, we've got binary, we've got hexadecimal, all happening at the same time, all simultaneously rendering the same content. Now that they're all here together, we can even move between these layers of language. Between binary and ASCII, between ASCII and hex. These layers of translation that are constantly happening in the machine, but which are inaccessible to us for the most part, and actually place ourselves in a representation of that movement from one version of a text to another. You can look at it from different perspectives. You can watch the characters rushing towards us. The cursor, that site of interaction. Move my hand through it. Look at it up close. As we take in this scene. Let's dial things back a bit. The reason for the music is once you're in this field of language, when you're not just looking at the characters that you can't interpret, but you're looking at the English words and letters in ASCII, the meaning becomes difficult to resist, just like musical rhythm. And so the fact that the first time the rhythm comes into play, the first time the words come into play, the rhythm appears as well. It reminds me of how that works, how difficult it is to escape the effects of language on us. Even if we try to remain aware of everything that's happening behind the scenes, all the minute translations going on, it's still somewhat irresistible, even if we try to stand outside of it. Now back to binary. One thing about the way that this language drum works is that it has a kind of momentum to it. If I tap it lightly, just a little bit of momentum imparted to the mechanism that's causing this language to be typed out. The harder I strike it, the more momentum is imparted and the more words that we see. In building this version of the room, one of the allowances I made was it was very unsatisfying when the momentum ran out in the middle of a word. You'd be stuck with seeing half of a word, and it was a very frustrating feeling. So I set it up so that once the momentum ran out, it would still continue until it reached the end of the next word, or the end of the current word. So that way you're always getting kind of coherent chunks of text, and it's much more satisfying as an instrument, as a reading experience. The music back again. That musical dynamic's also why the code fades, but the English does not. It's so hard to maintain in mind what's going on behind the scenes in the machine. The sign systems are so seductive. And so it takes actual physical effort in this space to keep the code present, to keep it visible. And of course, with the presence of the rhythm in the background, I'm tempted to play this instrument in time with it. Even as our character here is monologuing about computers as language machines, that being kind of their essential task. It says these machines are built from layer upon layer of logic, essays describing intimate relationships, linkages, ranges, and hierarchies. Each essay is a different thesis, a distinct point of view it tries to express. Some of these essays gives rise to morality, and a single flaw in their construction can impair an entire generation. They must be generous with our needs. They must be forgiving with our errors. They must be eloquent of ourselves. And this is where the character Perry ends his monologue, asking us to be mindful of the ethics of the systems that we design in digital space. Writing this text, could never have imagined the degree to which our daily digital discourse centers around the affordances of software. Who they enable, who they disable. In so many aspects of life. And now it starts again. It's a space about language, a space about the use of language, ethics of that use of language, and the difficulty we find in keeping all those concerns in mind when language is relentless. And sometimes you just want a place to rest without comprehensible language. To sit for a moment. To appreciate, even to enjoy the idea of language. Distinct from its meaning. This too is a seductive position. When people say that the computer is not a political device, they might be thinking of representations like this, where indeed politics seems difficult to discern. And yet, as soon as we turn those characters back on, it's right in our face. And the music's back. This mechanical melody you're hearing is made out of the timing of these words. Every time we encounter a space or the end of a line, a note is played. So the notes are almost enunciating the words. Typing and drumming have a lot in common. And the notes are conforming to the chords that we're hearing in the music as well. Always lining up. Dial it back again. I don't want to stay in any of these places for too long. Binary is enjoyable for a while. So is the hex. Enjoying the aesthetics of the language without specific meanings. But eventually you want the meanings. You want the music. You're ready to dance. Double consciousness, multiple layers of awareness is something I think digital experience is really good at. Because we can see it and perceive it here without having to intellectualize it too much. We can stand in the corner of the room, play our drum in time with the music, and take it in. Push ourselves cinematically through the space. Between layers of language. Comprehensible and not. Thanks for watching.